All right, welcome to week 8, English 123. This is our final week, our final assignment. This is the reflection assignment. So we're going to be, for this week, looking back on the last 7 weeks and how you've experienced this thing called the writing process. And what was your experience like leading up to that final submission of your paper on Sunday of week 7? How did this process go for you? What did you experience? What were the challenges, the struggles, the breakthroughs, the highs and the lows? The highs and the lows of being a student in this course, the highs and lows of just getting through the course. Maybe there's some, challenges outside of school, challenges in school, all those things. How did those all relate to you? And how did that all relate through, some type of faith integration that may have taken place over the process of the last 7 to 8 weeks? As I said in the last video, use discretion on the personal information that you provide. It's certainly applicable, but as long as it really relates specifically to your experience in the course, that's fine. And then also, you want to use discretion on what details you provide. Not all details are necessarily appropriate for an academic, professional type of environment. But again, you're welcome to include, background, my car broke down and I had to deal with that, or I was had struggling with work and I had to work overtime and my schedule was all mixed up and I had to find hours to research and to write and to work overtime at my employer, or perhaps maybe there's something a little bit more extemporaneous that may have taken place, of course. So those are just examples. Car trouble, work issues, things like that may have caused difficulty and challenges for you. So you can incorporate that into your reflection, of course. It's a personal experience. But again, as long as it specifically relates to the course, relates to your experience in completing the assignments. So I was going to go through the prompt, read through some of it, and provide some commentary on it to give you, hopefully some insight on what we're looking for, and then I'll go through the specific elements of the actual assignment and what we're looking for and how that kind of all comes together. So if you bring up the course activities in Blackboard for week 8 and then look at the reflection assignment, we're going to look at that prompt. So for the prompt, the title, Reflection, Literacy, Narrative. So this is a narrative assignment, which means there is a story to it. And this is a nonfiction, of course. Necessarily, we're not writing fiction. This actually really happened, so it's autobiographical. It's somewhat similar to a memoir or a personal narrative. You may have had this type of an assignment in an English 113 course. It's common to have a personal narrative in that, and you learn about the particular different elements of narrative and how those function and how those produce an interesting and engaging story. So this is a story about your experience. Now, ideally, it should focus on a specific moment within the course where you had a breakthrough, where there was an aha or a wow kind of a moment. Now, that can be a relative description. Wow could be a real big wow, or just kind of a, oh wow, I don't know. That's up to you. Depending on your experience, there could be a really significant, a moment of an epiphany, perhaps, or maybe just a, hey, that's interesting. I didn't know that before. I really haven't experienced this before. So the drama of that is up to you, of course. So we're ideally looking for a moment of breakthrough, a moment or a climactic experience that may have happened. Maybe you were looking for a particular source to really support a particular point you were trying to make, and you were searching for that and looking, and then finally you found that one source that said exactly what you needed. That would be one of those moments. Or maybe you couldn't quite get your point across and you weren't really sure how to say it. Maybe you had writer's block. How did you overcome writer's block? That would be one thing. I finally made it through after deleting draft after draft and false start after false start, I finally got my paper started. I finally overcome the writer's block. I went back to, the pre-writing and my free writing, and finally I was able to get through and really, convey that particular thought that I wanted to get down on paper. And of course, the drama that you use there is up to you. It may have been something really exciting for you. It may have just been something very stressful. Again, it's really up to you. So we're ideally after a particular moment like that, okay? So then that's the ideal. So then, let's see here. Okay, so did you experience and overcome or just survive a setback? So was there any setbacks that you had? Was there any obstacles? Was there anything that you needed to overcome to really be successful in the course? Did your topic of choice or your research topic or the writing process connect with your personal faith in some way? How and why? Okay, how and why? Now, just again, don't just tell me what I want to hear. You can be honest in this. You can, it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be both. You just want to have a story that really communicates the significance of your experience in the course. Okay. If there isn't a particular moment, you can just rely more on an informational, informative, or analytical reflection, and how, just evaluating how you went through the course and the learning process of the particular elements of the writing process. That's also fine if you don't really have that dramatic moment, because particularly maybe you won't. Not everybody will have that. So you can still approach it from a very informational, analytical way of just evaluating your experience, a review perhaps on your experience in the course. Not necessarily an evaluation, like a course evaluation. It'd be just more of it'd still be reflective, still be a narrative, but it'd just be probably more direct and maybe more to the point, maybe not so much of a dramatic approach around a particular climax, okay? So there's room for both. Or you can blend the two. If you want to take more of a serious approach or maybe more of a dramatic approach, that's fine as well. If you want to blend these two approaches together, that's certainly an option for you if it's interesting for you. If you have more of a creative writing type of mind for this. Okay. So then, see. Okay, if you can't think of any particular moment, you can still do it well. You can still do well on the assignment by being more informational, analytical, guiding the reader through your learning process in the class, and emphasizing an element of the course, like how your topic connected with your personal convictions or religious convictions. Make sure you provide specific examples, though. Okay, specific examples. You can refer to certain essays, sentences, any comments you may have received, or words with a classmate or any family members. You can include images, screenshots in your commentary about your particular sections of your essays that you want to do screenshots for. Your literacy narrative will be evaluated according to the following key features. Okay, so these key features: a well-told story, vivid detail, and some indication of the narrative's significance and personal connection to your faith or worldview. So really, this is where personal faith, worldview are really important in this. This is where we really want to meet, how this all applies to our Christian faith. We really want to put a strong emphasis on an integration of faith in this assignment. This is where you're able to articulate that. So you have the writing process, you have this course, you have your experience in this course and how you went through it and how you acquired these new skills. But then how does the subject matter and the details and this process all correlate to your personal convictions, your personal faith, and or your worldview, Christian worldview? How does all that fit together, mix together, and blend together to produce this final experience in English 123? Okay, so what is a well-told story? A well-told story goes through the particular stages of a narrative, the narrative stages. So inevitably, I would assume that you have some exposure with the narrative arc. imagine an arc, right? You have the rising action to the climax to the falling action, right? Very simple, 3 stages: rising, climax, falling action. Now the arc can take different shapes. It can be more of, rather than a nice, easy, symmetrical arc, it could be rising action straight up, falling action straight down. It could be more of a gradual arc straight down. Your arc can differ between person to person, narrative to narrative, depending on the experience and depending on how you want to present that story and how you want to emphasize the drama of the action. Tension and release are the 2 qualities of drama. So as you build up, you build tension, you build stress in the reader, and anticipation and suspense. So tension, stress, suspense, those all 3 could be used, and the rising action. So you want to approach this in some kind of dramatic way, even though I know it says here you can be more informative, but you still want to try to incorporate some elements of that dramatic arc in some way. How you do it is up to you. To what degree, how far you want to turn up the drama is up to you, but a narrative arc is expected. So the rising action, how you got to the place of where you're going, how you got to, let's say, draft 3, third draft, final draft for week 7, how you got to that point. Let's just pretend that the final draft is that climax of the event of when you submitted it finally through Blackboard. So what were the events that rose up to that? What was that experience like? What's the chronology of that like? How can you describe that? So whether you're going, leaning more to drama or leaning more to informative and analytical, it's still chronology is chronology. So how do you work your way up through that process to get to that peak? Okay, and then once you got to that peak, what was the result of that, and how did that suspense or that stress resolve itself? The release of that. So you have rising, peaking, and then a resolution of that, a release of that. So how did that all take place? What were the details of that? So you want to follow that arc. Rising action to a climax. You have to determine what the climax is. What's the peak of stress, the peak of suspense, the peak of the descriptive information, and then the falling action. Did they live happily ever after? That's really like the most common falling action of really any story. They lived happily ever after, right? That's the cliche. So what is that? Did you live happily ever after you submitted that final essay? And as we moved into week 8, it all depends on your experience. So that's what you want to look for. A well-told story follows the narrative arc. Okay, vivid detail. Now, vivid detail is, as it says, vivid information, vivid description, specific description of what's taken place. So using sensory descriptive adjectives, using action words, using active verbs and descriptive adjectives to describe, to give a sensory experience for the reader. Can they taste, can they touch, can they smell, can they see it in your mind's eye? Can you create a kind of a movie in the mind of the reader? Can they really see what's happening and what you're experiencing? Can you put the reader in your shoes in that description? And that's where the creative writing aspect of this comes through. With the narrative arc for a well-told story and the vivid detail, that's the creative aspect of this. So really use your descriptive writing skills to your best ability. Not everyone is necessarily feels very strong in this area as far as creative writing, descriptive writing. It can be challenging, but it's a good contrast to research writing. So you're getting both of both elements. You're getting research informative writing, but you're getting an opportunity to be creative and expressive. Using the first person in this, I strongly recommend using first person. This is all about you. This is not necessarily a research paper, so you're writing in the first person. You're describing your experience through a narrative arc, through vivid detail, descriptive words, and then number 3, you want to provide some significance. How is this event significant, whether good or bad? Good experience, bad experience. How is it significant for, and how does it relate to your own personal faith and convictions and worldview? So those 3 things. So definitely review the rubric for this assignment and write to that A category, exemplary category for each of these elements. Okay. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. And again, congratulations. It's been a pleasure to walk you through this class, to guide you through this experience, and appreciate you watching these videos and listening to the lectures and putting forth your best effort and your hard work into completing the course. And congratulations. All right. Thank you.